Queen Helena stood at the balcony of her grand palace, looking over the shining towers of the colony city. The stars above her stretched like silver dust across the sky, but they gave her no peace. Every day she carried the weight of her crown, and every night she returned to her chamber alone. Her people respected her and praised her strength, but behind her calm face was a truth she never spoke. She was bound by a prophecy that warned of a doomed destiny if she lived without a partner by her side. She told herself that destiny was only a tale, yet deep inside she feared the words were true. Helena had ruled for 10 years with steady hands. She listened to the council, settled disputes among the colonies, and signed treaties that kept the fleet safe. Many saw her as unshakable, but in private she often felt the ache of loneliness. She had watched others laugh with families, seen men and women find comfort in one another, and still she walked her path alone. Her crown was heavy, not only from duty, but from the emptiness that followed her every step. The council whispered about her fate when they thought she was not listening. Some feared that if she failed to find a partner, the colony would fall into weakness. Others believed that love was a weakness itself, and that a queen should stand apart from such ties. Helena ignored their debates in public, but at night their words echoed in her mind. She often wondered if she could truly face the years ahead without a hand to hold, without someone who could see her not as a queen but as a woman. One evening she walked through the palace gardens alone. The flowers glowed faintly under the light of the moons, and the fountains filled the air with soft splashes. She paused at the statue of her mother, the queen who ruled before her. Her mother had stood beside a king who had been her partner in all things, and together they had led the colony into a golden age. Helena had been a child then, watching the two of them guide the people with unity and love. Now, she stood in the shadow of that memory, asking herself if she would ever find such strength beside her. Her duties gave her no time to rest. Messages from distant colonies filled her days. Pirates had been raiding supply routes. Merchants demanded more protection. Farmers cried for new machines to help with crops. Each request came to her throne, and each time she gave an answer. She did not falter before her people, but her heart grew weary. She was a leader to all, yet no one to her was more than a subject. No one dared speak to her as an equal. Some nights she dreamed of a life beyond the crown. She dreamed of walking through the city without guards, of sharing simple meals with someone who did not see her as a ruler, but only as Helena. These dreams warmed her heart for a moment, then faded when she woke to the cold walls of her chamber. She told herself she must bury these wishes and focus only on her duty. The people came first. Her desires came last. That was the way of a queen. But even queens were human. She felt it most in the stillness of the palace halls when the council had gone home and the servants had grown quiet. The silence pressed on her ears, and the vast rooms seemed empty without another voice to share them. She wondered if the prophecy was more than words. Perhaps the doom was not fire or war, but a slow fading of spirit. The loss of hope, the breaking of a heart left alone for too long. Her advisors often urged her to choose a partner from the noble houses. They spoke of powerful unions and strong alliances. They named men with wealth and soldiers under their command. Yet Helena turned each proposal away. None of them looked at her with truth in their eyes. They bowed to her crown, not to her soul. She wanted someone who would see her as Helena, not only as the queen who ruled over stars. That night she lingered on the balcony again. The winds carried the scent of flowers from the gardens below. She closed her eyes and whispered to the silent sky. She asked for a sign, for a path, for something to tell her she would not always be alone. Her voice was quiet, but it carried all her heart. She did not know that far beyond the city walls, in a place where fire and smoke still clung to the ruins of an outpost, a man named Ethan was walking toward a fate that would soon cross her own. She did not know that her story was only beginning, and that her doomed destiny was about to change. Ethan walked through the dust and broken steel of the outpost. He had come from far away, searching for work and a place to belong. His clothes were worn, and his hands carried the marks of long hours spent fixing machines and building tools. The colony guards had at first turned him away, thinking he was just another drifter. But when the outpost reactor failed and threatened to take hundreds of lives, it was Ethan who stepped forward. With calm eyes and steady hands, he crawled into the heat and smoke, patched the leaks, and brought the system back to life. The people of the outpost spoke his name with respect, and word of his courage traveled quickly. News of this man reached Queen Helena's court. She listened in silence as her advisors told the story of an engineer who risked his life without hesitation. The council warned her that he was not a noble, not trained in the ways of the court, and not fit to stand before the queen. But Helena felt a spark of curiosity. She had heard many tales of men who claimed greatness, yet few had touched her heart. Something about Ethan's quiet strength called to her. Against the council's protests, she ordered that he be brought to the palace. The journey to the capital left Ethan uneasy. He had never stood in the presence of rulers, never walked in halls of marble and crystal light. He had built his life on small tools, engines, and wires. Yet now he was carried by guards to a palace that rose like a mountain of shining stone. The people lined the streets to see the stranger who had caught the queen's attention. Some whispered with awe, others with suspicion. He kept his head low, unsure why fate had brought him here. When Ethan entered the throne room, he felt the weight of many eyes upon him. The council sat in high seats, their robes heavy with symbols of power. At the center, on a throne carved with the history of the colony, sat Queen Helena. She wore no crown that day, only a silver band across her hair. Her gaze was sharp, but not cruel. She studied Ethan as if she wanted to see past his skin, past his rough clothes, into the heart that had carried him this far. "You saved lives at the outpost," Helena said. Her voice was calm, yet it filled the room. "Tell me, why did you risk yourself for people you did not know?" Ethan raised his head. His words were plain, spoken without fear, because they needed help. "Machines break, but lives cannot be replaced. I did what I knew how to do." The council shifted in their seats, displeased by his lack of formal speech. But Helena's lips curved in the smallest of smiles. It had been years since anyone spoke to her with such honesty. Most men bowed and filled the air with titles. Ethan spoke as if she were simply another person asking him a question. The queen asked him more. She wanted to know where he had come from, how he had survived the long voyage, and what he sought in the colony. Ethan told her of lost jobs, long travels, and the dream of finding a place where his work meant something. He did not hide his past or decorate his story with fancy words. Helena listened closely, and with each word she felt her heart stir. Here was a man who saw the world without masks, who faced life with courage, not for glory, but because it was right. After the meeting, the council gathered around Helena. They spoke with heated voices, urging her to dismiss Ethan. "He is not one of us," they warned. "The people will question your judgment if you bring a common man into the palace." But Helena did not bend. "He has done more with his hands than many of you have done with your power," she replied. "I will see him again." That night, Ethan was given a chamber in the palace. He lay awake on the soft bed, far different from the cold floors he had known before. He wondered why the queen, a woman of such grace and authority, had chosen to speak to him when nobles filled her court. He did not know that she felt something she had not felt in years. The rare joy of being spoken to as Helena, not only as queen. As the moon rose over the city, Helena stood once again on her balcony. She thought of Ethan's eyes, steady and unafraid. She thought of his words, simple yet filled with truth. The prophecy still lingered in her heart, but for the first time she felt a thread of hope. Perhaps her path was not sealed. Perhaps destiny was waiting for her to take a step she had never dared to take before. Ethan woke early each day in the palace, still surprised by the silence of the wide halls and the richness of the life around him. He had never lived in a place where food was served without asking, or where walls gleamed like mirrors in the sunlight. Yet he never let the comfort make him forget who he was. He still polished his boots by hand, fixed broken tools in the workshops, and treated servants with kindness. Word spread quickly among the palace staff that this man was different from the nobles who walked past them without a glance. Queen Helena began to see him more often. She would send for him under the excuse of needing repairs in her chambers or questions about machines. At first their talks were simple, about engines and tools, but soon they became deeper. She showed him the hidden gardens of the palace, where flowers from distant worlds grew in silence. She told him of the nights she spent awake, thinking of the prophecy that spoke of her doomed fate without a partner. Her voice carried no command when she spoke to him, only the soft weight of truth. Ethan listened. He did not laugh at her fears, nor did he bow and offer empty words. He told her of his own struggles, of nights spent on broken ships, with only the sound of failing engines to keep him awake. He told her how he believed that destiny was not written in stars but in choices. His words were steady and honest, and Helena felt the walls around her heart begin to break. For the first time since her crown was placed on her head, she felt seen not as a ruler, but as a woman. As their bond grew, the council grew restless. They noticed the way Helena lingered near Ethan, the way her eyes softened when he spoke. They whispered that the queen was forgetting her duty, that she was placing her trust in a man without name or power. Some even spread lies among the people, saying Ethan had come to claim the throne through deceit. Rumors began to stir in the city, and tension rose within the walls of the palace. Helena knew of the unrest, but did not turn Ethan away. She felt stronger with him near her, even when the council pushed harder against her. One night, after a long meeting filled with arguments, she walked with Ethan in the garden. The moons cast silver light on the leaves, and the fountains sang with their endless flow. She stopped beside him and said, "The council believes I am blinded. They do not see that you give me clarity." Ethan shook his head. "I am no leader, Helena. I am only a man who fixes broken things." She looked at him with quiet strength. "Then perhaps that is what I need most. Someone who sees what is broken and chooses to mend it instead of hiding it." Their closeness did not remain a secret for long. The council gathered again and warned her of threats from a neighboring colony. The rival leaders believed the queen was too distracted by her private life to defend her people. They prepared their fleets, convinced the time had come to strike. Helena's heart grew heavy with the news. The prophecy hung over her like a shadow, and now her own people doubted her strength. Ethan saw the worry in her eyes. He placed his hand over his chest and said, "You are not alone in this. Whatever comes, I will stand with you." She wanted to believe his words could shield her from what was to come, but war was not so simple. Already the skies filled with the glow of enemy ships gathering at the border. Helena stood before her maps late into the night, her mind torn between duty and her heart. Could she fight with her people and still hold on to the fragile bond she had found with Ethan? Or would the council's warnings prove true, that love was only a weakness that would bring ruin? The answer would soon come with fire. Alarms rang through the palace as scouts reported the enemy fleets moving closer. Soldiers rushed to prepare the defenses, and the council demanded the queen choose between her crown and her heart. But Helena had already chosen. She would not give Ethan up, not even for the weight of the stars. If doom was to come, it would find her standing beside him, not alone on her throne. The sound of alarms filled the palace as soldiers rushed through the wide halls. Queen Helena stood in the war chamber, her eyes fixed on the maps glowing before her. While the enemy fleets had crossed into their territory, and the skies were already burning with fire. The council shouted in panic, each man pushing his own plan, but Helena did not listen to their noise. Her heart was steady, even as the prophecy whispered in her mind. She would not face this storm alone.
Ethan was at her side.
He wore no armor of a soldier, only a jacket with grease still marking the sleeves, but his presence was strong. When the engineers reported broken ships and failing engines, he stepped forward without waiting for command. He gave orders with calm precision, guiding teams to repair the fleet faster than the council thought possible. Men and women who once doubted him now listened closely, for his knowledge saved lives with every passing hour. Helena led the fleet into the skies herself. She stood on the bridge of the royal flagship, her voice clear as she directed the formations. Ethan moved among the crews, checking systems, steadying their fear. The two of them together became the strength the people needed. Soldiers whispered that the queen was not distracted by love, but sharpened by it. For the first time, they saw her not as a distant figure, but as a leader fighting with them, side by side with the man she had chosen. The first clash was fierce. Enemy ships rained fire on the colony's defenses, shaking the ground and splitting the night sky. Helena gave command after command, her words cutting through the chaos. Ethan rushed between stations, sealing ruptures, lifting spirits with his unshaken tone. When the engines of one warship failed in the heart of battle, Ethan's quick hands brought them back to life, allowing the crew to turn certain defeat into victory. Hope spread through the fleet like fire catching dry grass. But victory did not come without cost. The enemy struck with cunning, setting a trap that lured part of the colony fleet into an ambush. Amid the confusion, Ethan was captured when he stayed behind to help evacuate a burning station. Helena's heart broke when she heard the news. The council urged her to ignore his loss and continue the fight, but she silenced them with a single look. "He is not just a man," she said. "He is the strength that has held us together." The battle raged on. Yet Helena's thoughts were with Ethan. She stood firm before her people, refusing to show despair, but within she wrestled with fear. The prophecy warned of doom if she lived without a partner. Was this the moment it became true? Would the man who gave her hope be taken away forever? She felt the weight of both crown and heart pressing down on her, heavier than any enemy fleet. As night fell over the colony, the fleets pulled back to recover. Fires burned across the city, and the wounded filled the halls of the palace. Helena walked among them, speaking to soldiers holding the hands of the weak. She saw the trust in their eyes, trust not only in her crown but in her courage. She knew she could not let that trust die. She would not sit in her palace waiting for news of Ethan. She would fight for him as fiercely as she fought for her people. She gathered her commanders and gave them orders for a daring mission. While the main fleet held the enemy at bay, she would lead a strike team into the heart of enemy lines to bring Ethan back. The council called it madness. They warned that if she fell, the colony would fall with her. Lena answered, "If a queen cannot fight for one she loves, how can she fight for all?" The night before the mission, Helena stood alone on the balcony once more. The stars burned cold above, but her heart was filled with fire. She thought of Ethan's steady hands, his plain words, the way he saw her not as a queen but as a woman. She swore that she would not let destiny steal him away. If doom was written for her, she would write a new ending with her own hand. At dawn, the fleet prepared for battle again. Soldiers strapped on their armor, ships powered their engines, and the colony braced for the storm. Helena walked among them, no longer a distant ruler, but a leader ready to stand with her people. Her eyes shone with resolve. She would not lose Ethan. She would not bow to prophecy. The war was not only for land or power, it was for the bond that had given her hope, and she was willing to risk everything to protect it. The morning sky was filled with smoke as Queen Helena prepared for her bold mission. The palace was quiet, yet the city beyond trembled with fear of another attack. Yes. Soldiers lined up before her, ready to follow her into the heart of danger. Helena stood tall, her armor shining under the pale light, but her thoughts were fixed on one thing alone. Ethan was out there, held by the enemy, and she would not rest until he was free. The fleet took flight at her command. Engines roared, and the colony's banners streamed against the wind of space. Helena led from the front, her flagship cutting through the stars with speed and power. The main forces moved to meet the enemy and hold their attention, while her strike team broke away, silent and swift. Her heart pounded as the enemy lines came closer, but her resolve never wavered. She had chosen her path, and there was no turning back. Inside the enemy stronghold, Ethan sat bound in a dim chamber. His hands were bruised, and his body ached from the fight that had led to his capture. Yet his spirit remained unbroken. He thought of Helena, of her strength, and the fire in her eyes. He believed she would come, even if it meant risking her crown. He whispered to himself that destiny was not stronger than human will. The strike team entered the stronghold with precision. Helena herself led them through steel corridors lit by red alarms. Blaster fire filled the air, but she moved forward with fearless steps. Her sword cut through enemy ranks, her voice guiding her soldiers with calm commands. They reached the prison chambers, and when she saw Ethan chained to the wall, her heart surged with both pain and relief. "Lena," Ethan whispered when their eyes met. He could not believe she had come herself. She rushed to his side, breaking his bonds with her own hands. For a moment they stood close, their breaths heavy, but there was no time to speak of their hearts. Alarms blared, and enemies closed in around them. The escape was a storm of fire and steel. Lena fought beside Ethan, covering him as he stumbled forward, still weak from his captivity. He, in turn, guided the soldiers through hidden passages he had glimpsed while imprisoned. Together, they broke free of the stronghold and returned to the fleet. The moment they stepped onto the flagship, cheers rose from the crew. The queen had not only defended her people, but had risked everything to save one man. That act gave the soldiers strength greater than any weapon. The final battle burned across the stars. Lena commanded with fierce clarity, while Ethan worked with the engineers to keep the ships alive. Every man and woman fought harder, knowing their queen was willing to sacrifice for love as much as for duty. The enemy fleet, though larger, began to falter. At last, the colony's ships pushed forward, breaking their lines and driving them into retreat. Victory came not only from strength of arms, but from the spirit that united the people. When the battle ended, silence fell over the skies. The colony had survived. Helena stood before her people, her armor scorched, her face marked by fire and exhaustion, but her eyes bright with triumph. Ethan stood at her side, no longer a stranger, no longer an outsider. The council, once against him, had no choice but to bow their heads. They had seen what the people already knew, that he was her partner, not by birth or power, but by choice and courage. The prophecy that once haunted Helena was broken. Doom had not come to pass. Instead, a new destiny was written, one forged by human will, by the strength of standing together, and by the bond that grew between a queen and a man who saw her simply as Helena. The people cheered their names, and hope spread across the stars. That night, as the fires of battle faded, Helena and Ethan walked together through the palace gardens. The fountains still sang, and the flowers glowed in the moonlight. For the first time, Helena felt peace in her heart. She was not alone, and she knew the future was theirs to shape. Destiny had tried to bind her, but love had set her free.